So we're continuing on with chapter 11 in the Tanya, Perek Yud Aleph. Short Perek, continuation of last week's Perek. Last week we saw the difference, somewhat, between a tzaddik gamur and a tzaddik she'eno gamur. A righteous man who is completely righteous versus one who's not so completely righteous. What does that mean? For the average human being, we cannot detect these things. When we see an individual, when we live with them, we can see pretty much that some people are really good and kind, generous, righteous in their ways. Obviously, for Hashem, for God, it's very, very different. He examines all our deeds. He knows our thoughts. He knows what goes on all the time. How we handled challenges. Did we act properly or not? Whether it was in our thought, whether it was with our speech or with our deeds. So when we're talking about a tzaddik or a rasha, as we will see in this chapter, the wicked man, we're not necessarily talking about reward and punishment in the afterlife, what this individual accomplished. We're talking more right now, the focus is on the nefesh, the soul, the spirit, the animal spirit, the divine spirit. We want to see what the leanings are, what the inclination is. Is this individual refined, or is he continuously doing battle, or from time to time doing battle with the evil inclination, even though he may defeat him, as we saw last week with the righteous man who's not a tzaddik gamur. He's not completely righteous, meaning he defeats the evil inclination. He abstains from doing that which is wrong. But the tzaddik gamur, one who's completely righteous, doesn't even have to deal with it. The evil inclination has left him alone, or has befriended him, doesn't interfere in his life. He's completely refined. Why? Because he has uplifted or elevated the ra letov, all the bad to good. What does it mean to uplift, to elevate the bad? It means even the physical, even that which we need for ourselves, for our bodily needs. It is not for our own personal gain. It is not that we have a certain interest in doing the will of Hashem ourselves. We are completely focused, hopefully, on doing what is right for His sake. So in order to do that, everything in this world, everything in the physical world, is also to do the will of Hashem. In other words, even though it is for us too, but the focus of the tzaddik gamur is that he has no need for it anymore. He's not distracted by it. He's completely focused on only what Hashem wants. So last week was about tzaddik gamur and tzaddik she'eno gamur, and we explained how in a tzaddik she'eno gamur, the little bit of ra, the little bit of impurity, or the little bit of netiyah, inclination to that which is wrong, to that which is bad, is kafuf, is subservient to the good. In other words, he's so good, most of him is so good, that the ra, the little bit of ra, is pretty much cancelled out. Batelu mevutal, it's annulled. He's able to control himself. Now we're going to be talking about the rasha. Rasha, you also have rasha gamur, rasha she'eno gamur. You have a wicked man, a wicked individual, who may be completely wicked, versus one who's not completely wicked. And it all depends on how he handles himself. In other words, does he have any control whatsoever, or has he lost control? Another term that is used in the Tanya is tzaddik v'tovlo, and tzaddik v'ralo, as we saw last week, a righteous man who has it good or who has it bad, as opposed to the other term that we use, tzaddik gamur and tzaddik she'eno gamur. And the same thing we will find with rasha. When we say rasha gamur and rasha lo gamur, we're also talking about a rasha v'tovlo and a rasha v'ralo. In other words, a rasha who has it bad and a rasha that has it good. So I'm going to just repeat briefly what we said last week. When we're talking about these terms, tovlo and ralo, there is the regular interpretation. What appears to be in this world, in life, individuals who have it good and have it bad. We're not talking about that simplistic interpretation, that some people have a good life and some people have a difficult, challenging life, even though they're righteous. Some people are wicked and they appear to have it good. So we're not talking about that simplistic interpretation of tovlo and ralo, good or bad. Here we're talking about the good in them or the bad in them. So you have, in the same way you have a tzaddik who has some bad, can have some bad, or he's a complete tzaddik, where it's completely tovlo. You also have a rasha, a wicked individual, who can have it good, something good in him, or he could have something bad, which makes him a complete rasha. So that's what this chapter talks about. It talks a little bit more about rasha, the wicked individual. In the same way with the tzaddik, we saw various levels. With the rasha, there's also various levels and degrees of wickedness. In other words, how much self-control does he exercise? In other words, how bad is he? What did he do? There's various degrees, even in crime, right? There is a misdemeanor, there's a felony, right? There's a federal crime. So same thing with the Torah. There's various types of avirot, transgressions. Some people don't carry it out. In other words, they think about it, they may desire it, but they don't necessarily carry it out. There's no maaseh. And as you recall, we spoke about it several times, that the levushim of the neshama, the levushim of the nefesh, the garments, are the machshava, the dibur, and the maaseh. The thoughts, the speech, and the deed. That is how we interact. That is how we perform in this world. So sometimes it only goes as far as a machshava, a thought. But as we will see in this chapter, even though a thought doesn't go too far, apparently it's only a thought, it is much more delicate than speech. Indeed, nonetheless, a thought can sometimes be more damaging to the soul if it's bad thoughts. So even though all it is a thought, it's definitely something. It's definitely substantial. So let's begin with the rasha v'tovlo, a wicked individual who has something good in him. And this parallels the tzaddik she'eno gamur. This parallels the tzaddik veralo. What did we say about tzaddik veralo? A righteous man who has a little bit of bad. That the little bit of bad is subservient to the good. In other words, he's generally a good individual. The little bit of bad is subservient, meaning that is batel, it is annulled. It usually is able to deal with it properly, successfully. So you have also with the rasha v'tovlo, even though he's wicked in the way he behaves, in his conduct, in his way of life, the majority of his deeds, but there's tovlo. In other words, tovlo meaning that there's something good there. Now, whenever we say something good, where is that good coming from? It's coming from the nefesh ha'eloki. Here we're talking about that good that resides in the moach, in the intellect, in the brain, and in the right ventricle, as we've explained before, the difference between the right and left ventricles. So here we're talking about something more divine, and that is why it is categorized or classified as being in a certain location. And I'm not going to go back into that. If you recall, there's a difference between the left and the right ventricles. So the same thing with the intellect versus the heart, the intellect and the brain, it is a different level. It is a different connection to Hashem. We need both. The heart is where the emotions are, the desires as well. But the emotions, when we talk about love and fear of God, we need both. One has to understand what he's doing, one has to identify with it, but the way he expresses it is more emotive. In other words, so there's always a combination of the two. On the other hand, it is possible for one to do the wrong things as well, with the intellect, right, thinking about certain things, or desiring the wrong things as well. So here with the rasha v'tovlo, what happens is the opposite, exact opposite of tzaddik veralo. With the tzaddik, with the righteous man, he was able to control the little bit of bad. Here you have the evil or the wicked individual controlling the little bit of good. Meaning that the good is subservient to the bad. What a shame. It should be that the bad should be subservient to the good. The good should be more powerful. The good should be in charge, in control. But that doesn't always happen. So you have some individuals that they have some good, but that good doesn't express itself loud enough. It is not strong enough, and it is subservient to the bad. Now, we said that there are various levels and various degrees in Reshaim. So he says, whether it's quantity or quality or level or degree of Rasha, he says, there's all kinds. Quantity, quality, level, meaning that even though we're talking about a Rasha, which generally speaking means an individual who's not doing the will of Hashem, still, because of that divine spark in him, because of the little bit of good in him, from time to time you see it. It does awaken, and that's very, very important. But it doesn't awaken too often. That's the problem. It doesn't happen too often. Or it could happen more often than not. In other words, you see how there's various levels. But when I said degrees, I mean about what type of things that he does that are wrong. There's all kinds of levels of deeds, whether it's in deed or in speech or in thought. So that's why, in the same way we have tzaddikim on different levels, all kinds of levels of righteousness. We also have levels of reshaim, some worse than others. So it could be that the amount of good that is in this rasha, kafuf, is subservient to the rasha, but only occasionally. What's occasionally mean? Every so often, that little bit of good somehow is extinguished. Somehow, that physicality in this rasha became so strong, it overpowered the good. And you wonder to yourself, how could he do something like that? Where's all that goodness that he has? Extinguished. It's not there, or it wasn't there today. Out of business. Sometimes you see it. So it all depends how often this happens. If it's only once in a while that is extinguished, but most of the time the good is there, well, Baruch Hashem, thank God, you can see it. But if it's only once in a while, that it expresses itself, but most of the time it's not there, that's no good. In other words, it would be better if it would be awake more often than not. So with Reshaim, you have various types of individuals that even though they have some good, that the problem is that good is subservient to the bad. And subservient could mean that it's not operating at all. Or it is operating but not often enough. Or the other way around. It's subservient only every so often. Most of the time it is operating, it is good. You see what I mean? It all depends on the intensity, I guess we could call it that, of the bad or of the good. Which one is more powerful? Which one is more in control? How often? To what degree? So therefore, with the Rasha V'Tovlo, what you have here is that sometimes the Rasha, the Ra, the bad in him, will overpower the good, and he will take over the Ir Ktana, as the Tanya says, the small little city, which is the description of the body. In other words, sometimes he takes over. As a result of the Ra, he's a Rasha. So even though there's good, but he takes over. Does he take over often? Or once in a while? That would depend on the level of Rasha. Sometimes he's every single day, or every other day, or every week, that the Ra, that evil in him, is taking over. And you don't see the good. Right? And sometimes it just happens once in a while that he succumbs to some sort of temptation, and then that Ra has overpowered the little bit of good, or the good has become subservient to the bad. It's important to keep in mind all the time that we're talking about two opposing powers here, the Ra and the Tov. We're talking about continuous battle, unless one has reached the point of either Tzaddik Gamur or Rasha Gamur. When you reach the point of Gamur, of completeness, then the battle is almost over. Not necessarily forever, there's always Teshuvah and repentance, but then it's a very different story. So here, as we will see next week when we talk about the Benoni, the middle one, the one who's in the middle. Here we talk about a little bit more extremes, whether it's the tzaddik or the rasha. Still, one is subservient to the other. So last week we saw how the bad can be subservient to the good, which is Baruch Hashem, which is great, but it's not complete yet until it becomes a tzaddik amur. Here we have the opposite. We have a rasha v'tovlo. In other words, at least there's something good there, but unfortunately that good is subservient to the bad. That's why he's called a rasha. It's important to also keep in mind when we call an individual a rasha, as I said earlier, we're talking about his inclination right now. We're not talking about his merits and demerits. How he will be judged upstairs, only Hashem knows, based on his deeds and his accomplishments. Right now we're only describing his nefesh, the inclination of the nefesh. Is he called a rasha or a tzaddik? Ech magdirim et nafsho. How do you define this spirit of this individual? Is he more like a rasha or is he more like a tzaddik? Because in the end, even if somebody does teshuvah, he repents for something bad that he did, he can still be called a rasha. Why? Because we're calling his nefesh. This is the nefesh of a rasha. We're not talking about the status of this individual upstairs. He did teshuvah, he's a tzaddik, but he has a nefesh of a rasha. You see what I mean? The nefesh here is inclined to do that which is wrong, that which is bad. He has some good, and as we will see, that good awakens in him repentance, awakens in him remorse, allows him to reflect. If he wouldn't have that little bit of good, he wouldn't even have that. See what I mean? But that good is subservient. That's why it's called Rasha. Who's in charge? The Rasha is in charge here, not the tzaddik. So here, partially, what has happened is that the little good has become subservient to the Rasha, to the Ra, and it has become, in a sense, like a merkava, like a chariot. We've explained in the past, a chariot, a vehicle, which basically means that the little bit of good follows along with the bad. It does not express itself as much as it should. It's like a merkava. It hitches a ride with the bad. And all this Ra is seen or is expressed in all the malbushim. It could be in the machshava, the dibur, the maaseh. It could be in the thoughts, it could be in the speech, and it could be in deeds. Okay, so since we're talking about levushim again, garments, and how deeds are expressed, or how thoughts are expressed, or speech and so forth, he says like this: when we're talking about a rasha vetovlo, that he has a little bit of good in him, or a rasha sheno gamur, he's not a complete rasha. When we're talking about maasim, if we're talking about deeds, we're not talking about the most serious deeds. Rasha she'eno gamur, rasha vetovlo, does maasim that are wrong. He does things that are wrong, but they're not the most terrible things. Okay? Remember, there's different levels? So here we're talking about maasim, doing the wrong things, but not the most serious ones. In the speech, it could also be that he gets carried away and speaks lashon hara, slanders people, talks negatively, in a derogatory way about others, or letzanut, he could be making fun of people. In other words, in speech too, there's different levels. Or in machshava, in thoughts. Thoughts too, different kinds of thoughts. How often do these thoughts come to him? All of this makes a difference. However, he adds something very important here, which I began to explain before, that even though thoughts appear to be less serious than a deed, it's only a thought in the mind. You didn't carry it out. It is more delicate. It's only a thought in the mind. However, rabbis tell us, and he quotes this, that hirhurei avera kashim me'avera. The thoughts of committing a sin are more difficult, more serious than the avera itself. Why? The avera is a deed. It left its mark. A thought is just in your head. The basic explanation is that because a sin grows out of something, the seed is the thought. The seed is what triggers the Avirah, or it can trigger. Once the seed is there, there's a potential for growth. So the thought leads to the Avirah. If you would not have the thought, you would not easily come to the deed, to the Avirah, to the sin. So rabbis tell us, is because that is where you begin the process, that you're actually planting. You're actually planning on it, thinking about it, conspiring. That's bad. So in what way is it worse? We're saying it's worse. It's worse because of what it does to the nefesh, to the neshama. The contamination that it does, the pagam, the damage that it does to the brain, not physically, spiritually here we're talking about, to the divine spark is much greater than the actual deed. When one commits a wrong, it's bad, it's definitely serious. But the thoughts, the intellect, the seat of the neshama, for that to be contaminated, that causes tremendous damage. And it interferes with the soul, wanting to do the right things. It blocks its way, it's contaminated. That is why the rabbis tell us to be extremely careful with our thoughts. Not only because of what it can lead to, but also because of the contamination it does. Now we can understand what we say every day in the Shema. We say, Lo taturu achrei levavchem v'achrei einechem. Right? Hashem reminds us in the Torah, be careful not to stray after your heart, after what your heart desires, and after your eyes. Well, according to the rabbis, who are the agents of sin? The eyes and the heart. But the rabbis tell us very clearly that first the eyes see, then the heart desires, and then the body does everything. The body takes care of the rest. It carries out the deed. So we see the two agents of sin are the eyes and the heart. But who's the one to blame first? The eyes, because had the eyes not seen, then the heart would not desire. So how come here in the Shema we're saying in the opposite order? We're saying, Lo taturu achrei levavchem ve'achrei einechem. Don't be led astray by what your heart desires, and not by what your eyes see. You should have said first the eyes, then the heart. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So what's the answer? Because the heart is curious. The desire of the heart is what leads people to think and to imagine. So that's where it really all begins. Even though it's true, it's still very true that if the eyes observe something, something begins to take place. Yes, it triggers something. It can potentially lead to something. But the Torah warned us to not even allow yourself to think or to imagine wrong things, because it could develop further. So the heart is curious. The heart desires, and therefore the mind begins to think or to imagine that which may be wrong. It may stop there, but it may not. So it's dangerous. He mentions briefly that especially if one is imagining or having thoughts about intimacy between men and women. Intimacy can be something very holy, and it should be holy. But if people have the wrong thoughts about that union, the union between a man and a woman, it could lead to terrible transgressions. One of the things that it could lead to is what the rabbis tell us, that a person should be very, very careful not to think or to imagine certain impure thoughts during the day, so that it should not you should not become unclean at night. All right? Be careful not to think about certain things during the day, so that you should not come to be unclean at night. And they learn enough from the pasuk, "V'nishmarta mikol davar ra." Watch yourself from anything that is bad, including thinking the wrong things during the day, which could lead you to become unclean at night. Now, he mentions this, but doesn't elaborate on this. And we know that, those of us who learned the Gemara, that this is a fact, that this can happen to people who, if they don't watch themselves, they see TV during the day or during the night. They can have dreams, not only nightmares, but dreams where all sorts of terrible things can happen to them, and they become unclean. Now, especially for a man can become easily unclean, lose control over himself as a result of what he saw during the day or what he thought about during the day. All right, and I asked myself, but wait a minute, why at night? I want to elaborate just a little bit more on this. It's an interesting Gemara. Why does this happen mostly at night? It could happen during the day too, but why would it happen at night? Why would the Chachamim, our sages, concerned that your thoughts, what you see during the day could lead to trouble at night? Why night? What is it about the night? If you recall, we've covered it in various lectures, that night is the time of the chitzonim and dinim. Nighttime is a time where the impure forces have a little bit of reign, a little bit of control and power. That is their time. The closest thing to this is most wild animals are nocturnal. That's when they hunt. Did you ever wonder why a wild animal? A raccoon. Let's think of a raccoon. You will rarely see a raccoon during the day. They're asleep, or hiding, or resting. They're not hunting, they're not looking for food. And the nighttime is the time when the animals, most animals, come out and do their hunting. And Hashem made it so. Shouldn't interfere with human beings. We, the human beings, most of us, work during the day, we sleep at night. They come out during the night and they sleep during the day. Same thing with the chitzonim, the impure forces. Somehow they were given rain at night, not during the day. Night represents dinim. Kabbalah explains that night is also a time of judgment. We're judged every night, not just Rosh Hashanah once a year. Every night the soul is judged for what it did during the day. It's a time of judgment. And we can go on explaining even more this whole idea of judgment and impure forces at night, but that's not the topic today. But that's what happens at night. At night really is a whole different dimension, I guess you can call, of certain realities in life, including the power of the tumah to reign, including when you wake up you have to wash your hands for a variety of reasons. We see various things happen at night. Okay. So they have control. As a result of their control, they can invade your dream. Those impure forces. Some chalomot have demons in them. Certain types of demons that invade dreams. Not all demons come to your dream. Certain types of demons come into your dream. And as a result of certain dreams, a man can become unclean. So the question is, why a dream? We just explained what happens at night, what the night is all about, who the night belongs to. But why a dream? And the answer is, I believe, because of our machshavot, of our thoughts. The rabbis wanted to impress upon us, be careful with your thoughts, with what you think about, because if you think about the wrong things, you're opening up the door for the impure forces to enter those thoughts, the dream that you're going to have. Dreams and thoughts are related. You see, you understand this? It works perfectly. In other words, why would they come to the dream? Why would they invade your dreams? Why the dream? Why that medium? Well, that's what's been contaminated. That is where you left the door open. You were thinking about it during the day in your thoughts. Well, the thoughts are the ones that are working during the night when we're asleep. The body is not at work, it's at rest. Who's at work? The thoughts, the dreams. So that is why they come in. The door has been left open. They sometimes come in, unless, of course, one protects himself with saying the Shema before he goes to sleep, with wearing tzitzit. There's various ways that one can protect himself, right? Look at Shir HaShirim, where Solomon describes himself, how he needed to protect himself from all these forces as well. He himself needed to protect himself at night. They wanted to go after him. So that is where this could happen. This can happen as a result of him leaving the door open. And what happens in the dream is that we have no control. We've lost control. During the day, we have some degree of control. We don't think, hopefully, about the wrong things. But if you let yourself think about them, then you will lose control about what you will dream about. That is the medium through which they enter. The thoughts, the dreams. Another example of where one may do the wrong thing is, let's say this is the nighttime, and he's able to learn Torah. He has some free time and he does not use it for the learning of Torah. He plays cards, he wastes his time. Mitbatel, as it's called in Hebrew. He just basically does nothing, kills time. The rabbis have something to say about that too. The rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, whoever is awake at night, or if he walks by himself at night especially, and he does not engage in the learning of Torah, he's pretty much risking his life. He's guilty of putting his life in danger. Something can happen to him. Why? He has no protection. We need protection. The Torah offers protection. The night is a time of danger, more so than the day because of the risks that we're exposed to the impure forces. Walking by yourself is dangerous. Right? Doing certain things that are risky, you're basically putting yourself in a situation where they may not protect you. So at least don't be mitpaneh or mitbatel from Torah. Don't let go of your Torah. If you're up at night, and this is a sha'at kosher, as he says, this is a good time, a propitious time, that you can use it for learning Torah, be careful not to waste it. So he uses this as another example of where people can do the wrong thing. So we're not talking about the most extreme rasha over here, right? We're talking about an individual that does certain wrong things. Whether it's in his thoughts, whether it's with his deeds, whether it's with his speech, but it's wrong. So why is he called a rasha? Because at this moment that he did the wrong thing, the ra in him overpowered the little bit of good. So you see how we're calling him a rasha, even though he may have many mitzvot to his name. But because of the way he acted, because of his behavior here, of not doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing, he's called a rasha. Okay, so where does the good come into play? After he's done all the wrong things, which remember, at this point we're talking about that which is wrong, but not the most extreme or serious transgression. After he has done all those bad things, all of a sudden he feels remorseful. Mitcharet. He's bothered by it. Where is that coming from? That remorse is coming from the nefesh ha'eloki, from the divine spark in him, from the divine soul. All of a sudden, he feels bad. He knows he did the wrong thing. And he doesn't stop there. He asks forgiveness from Hashem. Baruch Hashem, that's great. So does Hashem forgive him? What do you say? So the Baal Tanya says very briefly that Hashem will forgive him as long as the teshuvah, the repentance, was done properly. What does proper teshuvah mean? It means the way the Gemara spells it out. The way Rabbi Ishmael spells it out, that there's 3 levels of kapara, of atonement. The Rambam also mentions it. And basically it goes like this. If what he did wrong was a positive commandment, let's say he didn't put on tefillin one day. That's a positive commandment. So he didn't do something right. As long as he did proper teshuvah and he's remorseful about it and he commits himself to not let this happen again. They immediately forgive him. The teshuvah is sincere. He commits himself not to repeat it, obviously. Then he's right away forgiven. Right away. However, if what he did was not that he did not do a positive commandment, but he actually did a lotas, a negative commandment, let's say he ate something not kosher. He committed a transgression, a negative one. He needs 2 steps, 2 stages to his teshuvah. One, teshuvah, repentance, that he feels bad, remorseful, asks Hashem for forgiveness. Number 2, he needs Yom Kippur to help. So together with his teshuvah and Yom Kippur, he receives a complete atonement. Once his transgression is removed, once he's atoned for, that means the stain is gone. And Baruch Hashem, that's very good, because what the sin does, it's create distance between us and Hashem. The teshuvah is lahashiv, or lashuv, to return to him, to become close to him. It's been accomplished. So with a lo ta'aseh negative commandment, a regular negative commandment, like the example I gave you, 2 stages, right? Teshuvah, complete, sincere, and Yom Kippur. However, if he committed a negative commandment that has karet, where either he loses his life, or a number of years are subtracted from his life, there was a very serious offense where there is death as the capital punishment. There's different kinds of capital punishments in the Torah. So I'm just calling it here karet, where this is what's coming to him as a result of a very serious offense that he committed. Then 3 things are required, 3 stages to atone. He needs sincere teshuvah, 100% teshuvah, which means commitment not to do it again. Feels remorseful, sincerely so, right? Real teshuvah, where he actually verbalizes it, vidui, he verbalizes it too. Second stage, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is a powerful day, Day of Atonement, where he actually expresses his teshuvah again. So the day helps him. But, number 3, because of the seriousness of his offense, he needs yesurim, shememarakin et avonoto. He will need to undergo or experience painful experiences. It could be an illness of sorts. Something, kidney stones, something. I don't want to give examples because you may know people who have something. So, chas v'shalom, I don't want to say that they're going through because of something that they did wrong. But painful experiences, it could be financial loss too. Anything that's yisurim, pain. The stage number 3 is pain. So together with the teshuvah, Yom Kippur, and the yisurim and the pain, that will cleanse him. So many times these things happen while one is alive. That's much better than if it happens in the afterlife. We want to make sure we get there, we have a clean record. So just know that for the most part, Yisurim have something to do with some sort of avon, some sort of offense. It can also have something to do with a previous lifetime, but that is another subject, reincarnation. But for a serious offense, yes, 3 stages sometimes may be required to achieve complete teshuvah. He discusses this a little bit more in Igeret Teshuvah, which is afterwards in the book, in the Tanya book. So as we said before, even an individual has done teshuvah, he's still called a rasha if that is how we can describe him, that the little bit of good is subservient to the bad. It has nothing to do with his real status in heaven. Is he a tzaddik or a rasha? We're talking about his nefesh. An individual who is mostly interested in doing the wrong things, and sometimes he feels bad, sometimes he does something good. That's still the nefesh of a rasha. So here we're talking about the rasha she'eno gamur. We're talking about the rasha v'tovlo. There's something good there that is sometimes awakened. It's just subservient to the bad. It's mostly bad. Now, what happens if this individual has more serious offenses? In other words, he committed more serious averot. then obviously all the levushim, we're talking about all the garments that he has, the machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, the thought, the speech, and the deed, are being used or expressed in a very, very negative way, or, let's say not necessarily more negative, but more often, instead of speaking Lashon Hara once a year, every other week. So you see what I mean? When we said before degrees, various levels of Rasha, this is what we meant. It could be the number of offenses, it could be how often, it could be how serious it is. There's various degrees in Rashaim and how bad they are. So you could have an individual who's very often doing the wrong thing, or whose offenses are much more serious than the ones I just gave before. But even he, occasionally, mitcharet, he feels bad. He has a guilty conscience. He has hirhurei teshuvah, as it's called in Hebrew, thoughts about doing teshuvah. And this is all coming from the good in his nefesh. The good in his divine nefesh that is awakened from time to time. But what is wrong? You know what is wrong here? That this goodness is just not strong enough to win the battle. It's awakened, it feels bad, it bangs his chest, asks Hashem for forgiveness, and he really means it. Yeah, but that's how far it goes. It's not strong enough. We're talking about the nefesh of Rasha after all. We're talking about an individual who's more inclined to do that which is wrong. So the little bit of good sometimes is there, but not strong enough to win. Not strong enough to let go of the sin altogether. That is why the rabbis tell us in different words that Reshaim are always full of haratot. They're always full of regret, remorse, because the majority of Reshaim really do have something good in them. Very few are completely wicked. So occasionally they feel bad. Occasionally they say to themselves, what did I do? They may not tell it to you, they may not admit it in public, but they do feel bad deep down, but it's not strong enough for them to let go what they've been doing till now. Okay, so we've seen up until now examples of Rashaim, Sheinam Gemurim, Rashaim Vetov Lahem. There's some good there, they're not completely Rashaim. Now we're going over to the extreme, Rasha. Rasha Veralo, Rasha Gamur, a complete wicked individual, an individual who only has bad. How could this be? Well, didn't he start off with a nefesh eloki, with some good there? The fact that he has a divine soul, doesn't that mean that he has some good? So what happened? Rasha Gamur. So it could happen that an individual becomes so wicked to the point where the little bit of good in him leaves him. Left him. It's not there. Almost pretty much completely gone and extinguished. Now, how does that happen? So here, he explains very briefly a concept that is taught in Kabbalah, that sometimes the light, the divine light that is around, surrounds us instead of being inside of us. I'm going to explain it a little bit more because I feel that a lot of people who learn either Tanya or Kabbalah do not have a full grasp of what this means. It's called Or Mekif and Or Pnimi. An internal light, and a light that surrounds us, or that hovers over us from the outside, externally. Very important concepts. When you learn Kabbalah, you're always warned not to assume or not to compare the physical to the spiritual. Be careful not to assume that when we say or, we mean light. It's just the example we use so we can easily relate to it as a light. But it doesn't mean that there's a light inside of us. It's something spiritual that we relate to like a light. So the neshama, in a sense, is like a light within the physical body. It illuminates us, it shows us the way, it guides us, it strengthens us. It does so much for us. Now, Hashem is compared to an Or Ein Sof, to an endless light. Now, light is something that can permeate. It can penetrate. Especially the divine light. So you have a partial light that has permeated us, that has penetrated us, not only through the neshama, but through Hashem's, I guess you can say through Hashem allowing it to penetrate. Because Hashem allows a certain amount of light to penetrate the human being. Now, the human being is a guf, is a body that is also called a vessel, a kli. A vessel can hold something. This vessel holds a lot of blood. Actually, it's not so much blood, but it holds blood. It holds our spirit. That spirit doesn't just leave until the time comes. It's interesting. Even though we're full of holes. Have you seen a balloon with holes hold air? It can't. But somehow we can hold it. It doesn't just leave us. The body is an incredible piece of machinery. You have, look at the stomach. There's so many acids in the stomach that help to digest the food, but the stomach does not digest itself. Why don't the acids of the stomach eat up the stomach? Now, sometimes when a person is sick, that's what happens. That's an ulcer. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of problems that occur when something is not working right, in the intestines, in the stomach. But anyway, this vessel can contain light. But there's only so much light it can contain. The rest of it, and there's lots of it, is mekif. Is surrounding us. So I've explained in the past very briefly that the idea of surrounding means potential. In other words, it's not just there for no reason. It's there because we can draw from it. We can draw more from it. You can draw more light into yourself. Plus, mekif also means protection. The light on the outside is a necessary light. It's a boundary that Hashem wanted us to have so that certain forces out there should not penetrate so easily. Just like the ozone layer for Earth. This Earth has boundaries, has layers to protect us from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. See, it's the same thing. So the body needs protection, all kinds of protection. Physical and spiritual. So the Or Mekif is a potential light that we can draw from more, plus it's a light of protection from the outside that is always there. The light, the good, the little bit of light from the Rasha has been removed. He's so bad that a little bit of light has gone away and it's no longer an Or Pnimi, it's an Or Mekif. Mekif it is. It didn't just disappear. A person has no light at all around him probably would die. So that little bit of good, that little bit of light that was Pnimi, is completely gone. But it's on the outside. Could it come back? Yes, but very, very difficult. But it could come back. What will make the difference of whether it comes back or not? Something called Ratzon. The will of man is the greatest tool he has, the free will. The power of Ratzon. He has to want. Once he has demonstrated he wants something very, very much, Hashem may help him. And I'm going to tell you some incredible stories about all of this in a moment. But just wanted you to have an idea of what this Or Pnimi or Mekif means. Because in the end, you wonder, this individual, how come he doesn't have some good? Yes, he did once upon a time. But through his ma'asim, through his decisions, he basically drove it out. In reading about this, it reminded me a story which I told you about, I think it was the Belzer Rebbe, one of the great rabbis who once entered late at night to the place where the students were learning, the Bet Midrash. And all of a sudden he asks them, I have a question, can anybody tell me where God is? So they looked at the rabbi and said, what do you mean, where God is? God is everywhere. Malek kol haaretz kevado. His glory is everywhere. He said, no. He said, no. That's not the right answer. The answer is wherever you let him in. There are some people who don't let him in. So the light doesn't enter. I, however, prefer to say it a little bit differently than that, Rabbi, even though he's right in principle. Obviously, you have to let him in. And this, by the way, makes a big difference. Husband and wife, they want the Shekhinah, the divine light, the divine presence to be with them. They have to let him in. They have to conduct themselves properly. But I would prefer to say it a little bit differently, and you will see why. Because it fits with what we're saying here in the Tanya. Where is Hashem? Wherever you don't drive him away from. If you don't do something to drive him away, he will be there. Chilul Hashem, the desecration of Hashem's name. What does it mean, chilul? Halal. You created the vacuum. Hashem is everywhere, but because of this terrible offense that was just committed, perpetrated, you've created a vacuum. Out of this spot, the Shekhinah is removed. It does not want to be there. Something so terrible happened in that spot where that sin was committed that you drove it away. So where is Hashem? Everywhere from where you do not remove him, you do not drive him away. So this Rasha must have done something very, very bad to drive away that little bit of light that was Or Pnimi in him that could have helped him. That Or is now an Or Mekif. Now you can understand perhaps what happened with the Bet HaMikdash. The Bet HaMikdash is destroyed. The Shekhinah was there. But because of what happened, when the temple is destroyed, the Shekhinah is removed. But is it completely gone? Not completely. Rabbi tells us the Shekhinah is still around the Kotel HaMaravi. It will always be around the remnant of the Bet HaMikdash. What's the only remnant left of the second temple? The Kotel HaMaravi, the western wall. Even though the Zohar talks about the Shekhinah going with us into exile, being there for our protection. It's true. But the Shekhinah, in a sense, right now, is removed. It's not the same as it was when there was a Bet HaMikdash, a temple. So this idea of having no temple, no home, means that the Shekhinah now is begeder mekif and not pnimi. That's the way I like to explain it. In other words, the presence of Hashem, the Shekhinah, is no longer as it was, or as it was we want it to be, pnimi, with us, v'shachanti betocham, right? That we will reside with us. But at least it's around. It's a mekif. And that mekif is necessary because it needs to protect. The Shekhinah is therefore b'mekif, surrounding us, protecting us, and in a sense with us. But not as much connected as it was when we had a Bet HaMikdash. Therefore, he adds towards the end of the chapter that is the meaning that the rabbis tell us, Be'asara shchinta sharia. Wherever you have 10 Jews, the Shekhinah is around. 10? There's something special about the number 10, yes. But even if these individuals are not so good, they're not righteous individuals, but they're a group of 10, the Shekhinah is around. At least like an Or Mekif. In other words, it may not be an Or Pnimi, they may not be righteous enough, they may not be doing something that will allow that light to penetrate them and influence them. But as an Or Mekif, you have 10. Like in the synagogue, in the minyan, you have a koach, you have a certain power there because the Shekhinah is present, even though it's more of an Or Mekif. In other words, because of the goodness in them, they have a nefesh eloki after all, divine spark, they are worthy enough to have an Or Mekif, a light surrounding them and protecting them. Okay, what I want to do now, just to finish, is share with you a couple stories, very, very powerful, valuable stories that after learning the Tanya, it's easier to understand. There was once an individual, religious individual, who grew up in a religious home, went to yeshiva, but he did not have, as it's called in Yiddish, the Sitzfleisch. He did not have the patience, the desire, the will, the interest to sit and learn Torah all day. Not everyone has that. He wanted to go and explore the business world, see what's out there for him. Fine. The problem with that is that if you go into the business world, you have to remember that it's very risky. Not just because of all kinds of dishonest people, the elements, but if you're not connected to Torah, you can easily lose everything that you've learned, forget about everything, become disconnected from Judaism. And that's what happened to him, unfortunately. He left, and little by little, he became more and more detached from Torah and from Judaism. His parents, meanwhile, died. And he went on to work and moved away and became very irreligious. Some years went by, and he's sitting down eating lunch. And remember, even though he's become irreligious, he still has religious books at home. He still has some idea about what Judaism is. He didn't completely forget, but he became irreligious. So he's eating lunch, and all of a sudden he sees that one of the books in the bookshelf fell. Okay, he went, approached, picked up the book and put it back on the bookshelf. It happens. He went back to continue eating. As soon as he sits down to continue his lunch, a book falls down. He says, wow, maybe I didn't put it deep enough into the shelf. This time he made sure to stick it in all the way. Goes back to eat lunch, and what do you think happens now? The same book falls again. This time he figured, let me see what book it is. He says, it's strange. Picks up the book, looks at the title of the book, Sha'arei Teshuvah, the gates of repentance. As soon as he saw that, it struck him. The gates of repentance, of all the books, that's the one that fell. This is a clear sign, Mishamayim. A clear sign that they're awakening him, telling him, you've been carried, you've gotten carried away so much. He began to cry. And little by little went back to being observant and religious once again. What happened here? Mishamayim, they're awoken. It's very, very possible, actually very likely, that his mother or father or both were very religious, and they actually were. Righteous individuals who cried to Hashem, please, send him a message. Do something. It's up to him whether he will return or not, whether he will regret what he did, but at least send him a message. SMS, they say? Message, SMS?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Something. Anyway, and that's what did it.
Email would work too.
Yeah. What happened here? What happened here is what the Kabbalists say, that sometimes people, even though they're in the wrong environment, and they've really got carried away, and they're doing the wrong things, if they once upon a time performed a beautiful mitzvah, good deed, or if their parents were very, very righteous, they at least have the merit, the zechut, of being awakened. They help them awaken. Whether they choose to or not, it will be eventually up to them, but at least they help them. Another story happened with the Chosem Lublin, big tzaddik. This happened a little over 200 years ago. This was one of the leaders, third generation after the Baal Shem Tov, one of the greatest leaders in Poland, to whom many, many Jews went to for help, for blessing. Many great leaders were his students. Rabbi Yaakov Yitzhak Horowitz, Chosem Lublin. So there was a group of individuals who decided to travel to see him because they had a big problem in their town. In their town there lived a snitch. You know what a snitch is? A Jew who used to snitch and tell the authorities anything that he saw that was wrong against the law. And he was doing it out of malice. And they didn't know what to do to get rid of him. Okay, they said, let's go to the rabbi, maybe he will make a special prayer to eliminate him. After all, he's capable of doing that. So on the first day they arrived, as is customary done by Hasidim, you write the name and you request on a piece of paper, and you go in. And as soon as the rabbi looked at it, he didn't say anything. He put it away. They were stupefied, This is a very important request to save their community. He ignored it. They figured, okay, they'll go another time. They'll go in the evening. In the evening, they came to him, again with the same request, the same name of this snitch. He looks at it and he says, Tzaddik. This guy is a tzaddik. He says, wow, does he really know what he's talking about? He says, how could this be? I mean, we know the truth. We live there. And he says it's tzaddik. But remember, this is a big tzaddik, a big rabbi himself who knows everything. So the fact that he said it's tzaddik, they said, what can we do? All right. They were almost ready to give up, but they said, you know what, tomorrow we're going home. Right before we go home, we're going to go in one more time. So they went in the morning, and this time, he says, Tzaddik Gamur ke Kohen Gadol b'Yom HaKippurim. Something like that. He says, like a real completely righteous man, like a Kohen Gadol, like the high priest. Now they were completely puzzled. He says, we can't go home just yet. This is too much for us. What do we do? He said, we need to speak to him. So they decided to wait. Pushed off their trip, and they went in later on in the afternoon. This time they came in, Rabbi, we have a real problem in our community. This guy is really causing a lot of trouble. He's a snitch. What is his name? This is this and this. We gave you the piece of paper yesterday. So and so. Yemach Shemo v'zichro. Now he begins to curse, and now he begins to wish him the worst. Now he says, everything will work out for you, don't worry. He says, but Rabbi, we don't understand. Can you explain what? I mean, you were saying he was a tzaddik, you ignored us, it's tzaddik gamur ke Kohen Gadol, and now you, he says, what's this all about? So he says, when you first came to me, this man just had a baby boy. And I didn't want to, get involved. He just had a baby boy. Baby boy was born to him. When you came to me that night, he was preparing for the Brit Milah. So he was a tzaddik at that moment. He was preparing for a mitzvah. When you came to me in the morning, he was a sandak holding the baby during the circumcision. He was like a Kohen Gadol in Yom HaKippurim. Now the Brit is over. Now I can do with him. I can grant your request. He's no longer the tzaddik. I shared with you the story just to show you how at that moment, a rasha, a wicked man, because of what he's doing, something good, he's a tzaddik at that moment. The problem is that it doesn't hold too long. See what I mean? The bad in him is overpowering the good. But it could be that at a certain given moment a person is righteous. It could be that because of something he did, he's a tzaddik. Just to finish up with the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov asks a very good question. The rabbis tell us, B'chol yom v'yom, bat kol yotzet mechorev. There's a heavenly voice going out, a heavenly voice coming out of Mount Sinai every day, calling out to Jews, return to me, my children. Return to me, do teshuvah, repent. The Baal Shem Tov asks, wait a minute, if a heavenly voice goes out, why don't we hear it? Right? If we don't hear it, then why does it come out? You understand the question? What's the purpose of this heavenly voice if we don't hear it? It says in reality the neshama does hear it. We don't take action, but the neshama, the soul, is capable of receiving information from above in ways that sometimes we don't even realize it. We feel something subconsciously. Something is telling us something. Someone is speaking to us. Something is awakening us. What's being awakened? The neshama. But you didn't hear. What did you hear? You didn't hear with your ears. Your neshama heard. It's a different wavelength. And it is receptive. Not everybody picks up on it. Not everybody does anything about it. Some people do. So that is what the Baal Shem Tov is explaining, that ultimately there is a need for this Bat Kol to continuously come out to remind us of our duties, to remind us to return to Hashem. Some people will pick up on it. And this generation, right before Mashiach comes, there will be a large amount of people, B'ezrat Hashem, who will do teshuvah. This is the teshuvah movement that we see from the mid-70s. This is what the Torah promises will happen. This is one of the signs of Mashiach, that sometimes children will bring back their parents. This is a sign that Mashiach is coming. How could this happen? This would not have happened. It did not happen years ago. Hashem is helping. He's raising the volume. And those who will pick up on it will usually be those whose parents or grandparents may have done something very special, righteous individuals. They shed tears. Those tears, our rabbis tell us, did not go in vain. They're kept. They may not have helped the individual when he was alive, but they will help his children or grandchildren perhaps. Tears are not just shed in vain. They're stored away for some time, for some reason that Hashem feels that is necessary. So this is the time that B'ezrat Hashem, all of us will hopefully witness a tremendous awakening of more and more people doing teshuvah. Thank you.